I'd never imagined my lowest moment would take place in the backyard of a lake house in Vermont. But there I was, 30 years old, wrists tied behind a splintered dock post, barefoot on cold flagstone, surrounded by relatives who once pretended to love me. Laughter echoed like static, sharp, cruel, inescapable. My father stood nearby, swirling a scotch like it was just another family get-together. He raised his glass toward me, grinning like he was proud of some cruel punchline. "You've always been a disgrace, Camille," he said, loud enough to entertain the crowd. "A parasite with no spine." A few uncles laughed. My cousin pulled out her phone and hit record. I stood still, not flinching, not speaking. They wouldn't get the satisfaction. My mother sat in a wicker lounge chair by the fire pit, pretending not to watch. But this entire performance, it was her idea. "You always thought you were better than us," my sister Vanessa muttered as she passed in her silver cocktail dress. "You're just pathetic." My knees trembled, my pride was ashes. I'd been labeled the black sheep, the soft one, the failure. And then, the sound. A deep, smooth engine rolled up the gravel drive. Conversations froze, jaws slackened. A black Rolls-Royce came to a stop at the gate. The engine clicked off, doors unlocked, and out stepped him. Alexander Reed. 6 months vanished from memory in a breath. He stood tall, regal, deliberate, in a charcoal wool suit that looked custom-grown, not tailored. His eyes scanned no one but me. My pulse faltered. He strode toward me, every step cutting through the thick, shame-soaked air. Guests parted without thinking, like the tide making room for a storm. He stopped, right in front of me. His jaw clenched at the rope digging into my skin. "Camille," he said, his voice low and lethal. "Who touched you?" Gasps spread like fire. "The old ones." My father blinked, as if Alexander had spoken in some foreign dialect. My mother shot to her feet, her chair screeching across the stone tiles. Alexander didn't wait. He slid a slim blade from inside his coat, quiet, clean, and cut through the rope binding my wrists like it was thread. I didn't even exhale. I couldn't. I just stared, stunned, as he gently took my hand, lifted it, and kissed the raw bruises, with such care that my throat locked tight. Then he turned to face the crowd. "This woman is my wife," he said, voice smooth and lethal, "and I want to know which one of you thought tying her like an animal was acceptable." The yard froze. Vanessa's wineglass cracked against the patio. My mother whispered, "Wife?" as if the word offended her very lungs. My father's mouth opened but no sound emerged, and then came the line that turned smugness into shock. "This house? I bought it last week." He glanced at his watch. "You've got 15 minutes to leave." I watched it happen. Shot crashed through self-righteous faces like a wave. My father stood stunned, glass dangling from limp fingers. My mother blinked like gravity had abandoned her. And Vanessa? She looked at Alexander like she'd just seen a ghost walk through fire. I rubbed my wrists as Alexander turned to me, softer now. "Did you ever tell them?" I shook my head. I hadn't. Not about the businesses we built. Not about the debts I'd paid. Not about anything. He looked at the frozen crowd. "Camille didn't say anything because she's still more loyal to this family than any of you ever deserved." And then, quieter, this house was in foreclosure, taxes unpaid, creditors circling. She drained her savings, sold her car, just to buy you more time. The same people who mocked my thrift store shoes now stared at me like strangers. And for the first time, I didn't look away. The same people who once called me a charity case now stared at me like I was a stranger. Like I'd slipped through their fingers and become someone they never bothered to understand. When the final foreclosure notice came, Alexander continued, "Camille called me, not to beg, not to whine." He looked around the yard, his voice low but pointed. "She asked me to buy the house quietly, so your precious pride wouldn't suffer." My father suddenly snapped, voice raised in disbelief. "You're lying." Alexander didn't blink. "Am I?" He reached into his suit pocket and pulled out a folded document. A deed. He handed it to my father. You signed it yourself. My father's hand shook as he opened it. He scanned the page, and I saw the moment his eyes froze on his own signature. Ale. From the day he signed over the property to a private investor, trying to save face. That investor was Alexander. My mother rushed forward, her voice sharp with panic. You deceived us. No, I finally spoke. My voice cracked, but it cut through the silence like glass. I saved you, and you tied me to a post. Alexander turned to the group, his voice steady. You didn't raise a failure, you raised a woman who gave everything to keep you afloat. She sacrificed her future to preserve your past, and this is how you repay her? He didn't need to shout, the truth did all the heavy lifting. Then he finished, cool as ice. You have 15 minutes to collect your things. After that, the locks change. And for once, they listened. No yelling, no tantrums, just stiff silence and scrambling hands. The same people who used to bark orders at me were now snatching up their designer bags and coats, avoiding my eyes. My mother, the one who once said I was the reason our family had no standing, walked past me like I was a ghost. But I wasn't a ghost anymore. I was the one holding the keys. She never got to live her dreams. Couldn't even look me in the eye. Vanessa, my sister, the one who mocked my clothes, my quiet nature, my unimpressive little job, tried to walk past me, like I didn't exist. But Alexander wasn't going to let her pretend. He stepped directly in her path. Vanessa, he said evenly. Apologize. She blinked, like the word had no meaning. Excuse me? He didn't raise his voice, didn't flinch, just repeated, apologize. You filmed her. You laughed while she stood there tied up in front of strangers. You humiliated your own sister. Now apologize. Her face flushed crimson, her jaw twitched, not from guilt, but from pride cracking under pressure. Rage bubbled just beneath her lip. Still, she looked at me. Eyes hard, voice tight. I'm sorry. I said nothing. I just gave a single nod. And somehow, that crushed her more than any screaming ever could. My father walked past next. He paused, hesitant, then looked at Alexander. Whatever she told you, she didn't tell me anything. Alexander cut in. I watched, for years, while she held this family together. While you all looked the other way. My father opened his mouth, but Alexander continued. You know what's tragic? She would have forgiven you, even today, if you'd shown 1 ounce of remorse. That landed like stone. My father's face cracked. He lowered his head, not in shame, but in recognition of everything he never saw. Then he walked away. No hug, no apology, just silence. And somehow, that was enough. When the final car rolled down the gravel drive and the yard finally hushed, it was just me and Alexander beneath the late summer sky. He reached out, brushed a strand of hair from my face. You all right? I nodded. Slowly. I think I am now. Then, to my own surprise, I laughed. Soft, weightless, like I'd exhaled years of buried breath. Alexander smiled, warm and familiar. Come on, he said, slipping his fingers through mine. You've spent your life saving everyone else. Let's talk about what you want now. And for once, I was ready. When the last SUV disappeared down the winding drive, the stillness it left behind was almost deafening. But not the crushing kind, not the kind I used to dread. This was a gentler quiet, the kind that lets your lungs finally fill. That night air, brushed with pine and the last warmth of sunset, felt like breathing for the first time in years. For so long, that house had echoed with cold glances, polite cruelty, and performances for neighbors who never saw behind the curtain. I used to tiptoe those floors like I didn't belong. The girl who fixed the plumbing, paid off overdue bills, and got blamed when the lights flickered anyway. But now, I stood in the foyer, Alexander's hand laced in mine, and saw it differently. For the first time, it felt like mine. Feels different, doesn't it? he asked gently, setting his keys down near the front door. I nodded. I keep thinking someone's about to bark at me to polish the silver. He looked at me, softly, steadily. No one's going to do that. Ever again. I walked slowly into the living room, the same one where hours earlier I'd been mocked like I was disposable. Wine glasses still sat like forgotten props. Abandoned cake plates lined the table like the aftermath of a stage celebration gone sour. Alexander followed, not rushing me. You're allowed to be angry. I'm not, I whispered. I'm just tired. Tired of begging for crumbs, of twisting myself into something more palatable. He nodded. You never had to earn their love. They failed you. But that line, quiet and true, lodged deep. We stepped onto the back patio, now cloaked in gold. The pole where they tied me still stood. Alexander walked to it, untied the last frayed rope, and without a word, tossed it into the trash. You could sell this place, he said, leaning on the railing. We could start over. Paris, Seattle, somewhere warm, somewhere free. I smiled. You know I hate snow. He laughed. Then scratch Vermont. I sat down on the old cedar bench, letting the last golden light of evening warm my skin. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't bracing for a jab. I wasn't tensing for a sarcastic comment, or waiting to be told I was too sensitive, too dramatic, too much. Do you remember when we met? I asked. Of course, Alexander said. You were juggling 2 jobs, finishing night classes and still managing your father's bookkeeping while making sure your mom had her prescriptions. And you, I smiled, were living above that used bookstore downtown, building a software company in a rented hoodie no investor would touch? He laughed. You were the only one who believed in it. I looked at him. I didn't see a billionaire. I saw someone stubborn, brilliant, kind, and I saw someone with more heart than the entire family she was drowning in. That quiet settled again, soft, welcome. We sat there for a while. No need to speak, no need to defend or explain. Just stillness. Just peace. Eventually, I leaned my head on his shoulder and whispered what I hadn't dared say aloud in years. I want to start over. I want a life that's mine. He turned, brushing my knuckles. Say the word. We'll build it, brick by brick. No more proving anything to anyone. And somehow, the house behind us didn't feel like a prison anymore. It felt like a door opening. Funny how peace arrives. Not with a bang, no applause, no spotlight. Just a quiet breath you didn't realize you were holding. That night, after everyone had gone, we sat on the living room floor, backs against the couch, lights off. Nothing but the hum of crickets and the weight of a silence that finally felt safe. Alexander took my hand, fingers softly tracing where the rope had once cut, like he was learning every wound, just to help it heal. I looked around at the perfectly staged family portraits still hanging. I walked to one, took it down, turned it over. Keep it, he asked. I shook my head, laying it face down on the table. That's not who I am anymore. Because the truth is, I spent years trying to fit inside a frame someone else painted, playing the dutiful daughter, the quiet sister, the fallback plan. They called me dramatic when I stood up for myself, selfish when I set boundaries, and invisible when I succeeded without their permission. But now, I didn't need permission or their approval. The next morning, I woke in my own bed, sunlight filtering through open windows and the clean scent of rain-soaked pine drifting in. The air was different. The house felt like it had finally exhaled after years of holding tension in its walls. Alexander had already brewed coffee. He handed me a cup like it was instinct, like this was our rhythm now. For the first time in forever, I didn't feel like I was waking up in hostile territory. I felt whole. Over the next week, we cleared the place room by room. I packed away my parents' things without tears, just clarity. I wasn't grieving. I was letting go. I'd carried their burdens long enough. In the attic, we found my old notebooks. the ones I used to scribble in when the house was too loud to speak. Inside one was a list titled, "Things I'll Do When I'm Free." Alexander leaned over my shoulder and smiled. "Learn to paint a sunset?" he teased. I laughed. I didn't say they were big dreams, just mine. "Then let's get you some paint," he said, kissing the top of my head. We turned the dusty study into a bright art room. He built the shelves himself. I filled them with messy canvases and forgotten colors. Every stroke felt like a part of me returning. We started eating dinner at the old oak table, the same one where shame used to sit between us. Now it held candles, fresh bread, stories, and warmth. One night, Alexander came home with a key and dropped it into my hand. A cabin, up north. Lake view. No neighbors, just sky, trees, and quiet. I looked at the key. "You're not running away, are you?" He shook his head. "I just want you to know, from now on, you have options, not obligations." That was when I knew. This life was mine now, not borrowed, not earned through sacrifice, just mine. A few months later, a wedding invitation arrived. A cousin's engagement. My name was spelled wrong. The envelope read, "Camille and guest, if any." Alexander raised an eyebrow. "Want to go?" I smiled. "No, but I do want to send something." I pulled out a photo. Me and Alexander at a global tech summit, smiling beside his innovation award. I signed the back. "From the useless child. Thank you for setting me free." I slipped it into the envelope. No bitterness, no vengeance. Just truth and peace. Now when I wake, I water my herbs. I paint. I walk barefoot on the porch with coffee in hand while Alexander hums off-key and flips eggs in the kitchen. We laugh, not because life's perfect, but because it's finally real. I don't know where we're heading. I don't need to. All I know is the girl they tied to a post that day, she's gone. In her place stands a woman with her own voice and a love that never asked her to shrink. And if I could speak to that broken girl, bruised, humiliated, barely standing, I'd whisper, "Hold on, you're not finished yet. The best part's still coming." If my story stirred something in you, if you've ever felt overlooked, silenced, or told you're too much or not enough, leave me a comment. Tell me what part of this journey resonated with you. Because I promise you're not alone. And maybe, just maybe, if we speak up together, someone else will find the strength to stand up too. I spent years shrinking myself to fit into rooms I was never meant to stay in. Don't do that. Don't wait for someone else to validate your worth. Start now. Build your version of peace, brick by brick, word by word, color by color. If you believe in second chances, in quiet strength, and in becoming the hero of your own story, then I'd love for you to be part of this community. Like, comment, and subscribe. Because healing doesn't happen in silence, and neither does the next chapter. Let's turn the page together.